colleague, news anchor Ryan Beishu joins me. Great friend, and he's one that I always look forward to discussions, especially regarding today's theme and today's importance. Today, indeed, World Press Freedom Day, celebrated not only here in Trinidad, but across the world. And it's a very interesting theme, and I think Ryan is the perfect man to speak on this because we would have recalled his amazing reports from COP, and he's a man that holds that whole environment and that whole sustainability thrust top of mind. So the theme, a very interesting one, a press for the planet and journalism in the face of the environmental crisis. I never saw a correlation really between journalism and environment. I guess Ryan could elaborate. Great to see you, Ryan, and happy World Press Freedom Day.
Thank you, and same to you, and same to all of our colleagues here in the media industry in Trinidad and Tobago and around the world. It's a very interesting question because, and it's not an isolated one, Jason, because a lot of people are asking the very same thing that you're asking. All right, so we've got the war in Ukraine, we've got the war in Gaza, we've got so many other conflicts around the world, we've got poverty cases where we need to be covering a lot more and focus a lot more. So why the environment? What's the connection between journalism and the environment? I think it's reached a very critical point, especially you mentioned being at COP. It's reached a very critical point in covering climate change and the environment. Why? When you're covering climate change, when you're covering the environment, the task of covering these things in the face of governmental agendas, big oil companies, that's become increasingly challenging for journalists around the world. You are threatening the profits of big oil. They do not want you telling those stories. They do not want you raising awareness. And they've actually, you and I spoke about this while I was in Dubai. In Dubai had the most number of lobbyists, oil and gas lobbyists, that they've ever been at a United Nations climate change conference. So that in itself tells you that the alarming rate by which they're trying to suppress stories, particularly when it comes to the environment, and of course the environment and climate change, those are topics right now that are really some of the biggest topics that journalists can cover at the moment. Yeah,
because obviously massive money is at stake. The loss.
Massive money.
Massive. You know, it reminds me of when, mass media was used back in the day to bring about the ills and the concerns regarding the tobacco industry. Remember that they tried to suppress that too. Lots of folks went into that particular discussion and was saying, no, it's not too bad. And then eventually it's really mass media were the ones to bring forward that kind of awareness. So I guess we're kind of seeing that in this modern time now with the environment. And I guess, as you said, lobbyists almost pushing back. So we need the journalists globally to continue their message.
Absolutely.
And to work with transparency. I want to ask you, you mentioned government agenda. I'm looking at what's happening with the college protests in the US. And I've recognized that it seems to me, in terms of the journalistic approach or that theme, it varies according to what part of the world you're located. So we see a different kind of story and narrative coming out of the West compared to our journalists, our colleagues in the same field who are in the East. Do you think the politics of the day or the ideology of a particular area or space can indeed dictate the story?
Absolutely, and you know, on the back of that, it's not just with that particular story, but so many other stories. You find yourself, if you're looking at American television in particular, you find yourself either looking on the left or the right, as you quite correctly pointed out, because CNN might have a completely different take than Al Jazeera. They may denounce the protests, Al Jazeera may highlight the protests as pro-Palestinian. But it also digs much further deeper if we are to connect it with what's happening back home here in the Caribbean. And it should, and this is very important, we really ought to appreciate what we have in the Caribbean. Sometimes we undervalue it here in Trinidad and Tobago. But we don't have that in Trinidad and Tobago. You don't have right newspapers or left newspapers, or you mostly have objective newspapers, objective press, trying their best every day. Maybe we don't get it right every day, but we try our best every day as an industry, as a local industry, to tell stories objectively and to be as fair as possible. And that's something that exactly what you're talking about, Jason, we ought to have a greater appreciation for in this country. as opposed to turning on maybe CNN and you're getting one side, an agenda of one side, the left side, or Fox and you turn on and you get the right side of the story. I think that's something that today's a great day. You bring up an excellent point. I think that today's a great day for us to appreciate greater. Yes, we're a small market. Yes, we're a small industry, but we still get a lot of things right.
Do we still, and based on what you just said, Ryan, our journalists, from your standpoint, looking at the stories across the board, do we speak truth to power here in Trinidad and Tobago?
I think we do our best to do it every single day. It's a difficult job, and I don't think people understand how challenging a job it is. Do we have a lot of work to do as an industry? Absolutely. We have a lot of journalists who are young journalists in this country. And it takes time. You don't get to 50 years of experience without going through 30 and 20. So we have a long way to go, yes, but I think every single day through the management, the exceptional editorial management in some instances, we're able to look at our journalists and try to hone them to speak that truth to power that you speak of.
In terms of going into volatile situations, I know obviously the crime scenario in Trinidad is a cause for major concern. Obviously it's not a war zone like, let's say, places where there's civil unrest like Haiti and Sudan and other parts of the world.
I just want to make a quick point because you said something very key there. This is the United Nations Development Program. This is not me. The UNDP says that subconsciously what places like Latin America and the Caribbean go through mentally when it comes to things like the crime that you speak of is actually synonymous with places like Sudan, like places like Gaza. Huge statement, right? Huge. You look surprised, and it was surprising to me too. That's the UNDP saying that. I just actually finished the course and they were saying that very same thing. So it's actually synonymous mentally. We may not be living on Gaza, but we have, because of the crime situation, we actually have that level of fear.
And the reason I say this, there are times where certain reporters will have to go into certain zones in Trinidad with a bulletproof vest. That is how serious it is. Because you know, you need to protect yourself, the cameraman, the entire team, the editors. So I'm saying to you this morning, when we look at that line of, that part of the job, you know, the safety element, what's the conversation like? What's the mood like, especially when you are called on to deliver a story or to cover a story in a situation that is very volatile?
Yeah, so that's a very good question and a very key question, because I think for the benefit of our viewing audience, it's good that you asked that question so that they know that I can't speak for any other media house, but certainly us here at Guardian Media has never and will never put our journalists in danger. If there is such a volatile situation that you speak of, we would rather not have a journalist there to harm themselves or to even harm their families, because that's a very real prospect as well. You may not be physically harmed, but you may be targeted. So I think that's a very important point that I just want to nail down, that we would never put our journalists, any of our journalists, in a situation where they are in harm's way, be it physically or be it mentally or be it their families targeted or themselves targeted. Having said that, though, there are a lot of situations where it requires an editorial decision, strong editorial decision making, in order for us to, you know, look at the situation and say this is super dangerous or this is very dangerous, and this, while we want to tell the story and we want to make people aware of what is happening, we have to go about it in a secondary manner. We cannot just attack the situation. Yeah,
because, you know, I kind of phrased it there to bring it to my next point. And of course, as we wrap things up in a short while, I'll ensure you give a message. But I said that to establish, so many times people want the exclusive, they want the shot. You want that to be on the ground, to see it in real time. And sometimes in the attempt to be first, well, I hope, and I know that we try our very best. That's of paramount importance to vet the story. But where's that balance? Because we see sometimes media houses, in that attempt to be first with the story, they might go with unverified kind of scenario. How do we change that particular reality that still exists, unfortunately, in the business?
It still very, very much exists. I mean, up to a few months ago, we had a situation where a media house went first and got it wrong. It still very much exists. it calls for a level of responsibility. And I think this is not only what the American market did to not just us, but a lot of other places around the world, but also social media. They need to be first. They need to be fast. Get it out.
Yeah, that breaking story, breaking news.
We have to be first. Being second doesn't matter because they read it somewhere else. There's a level of responsibility which unfortunately or fortunately comes with a level of patience. Our editor-in-chief here at Guardian Media, Kemar Jordan, always likes to say, verify. We have to verify. Being first is important, but being first unverified is of lesser importance. So we need to get back to that place of not just first, but we need to verify the information, because there are huge consequences, and we need to understand the huge consequences of putting out not only unverified information, but things that are false. There is a ripple effect of misinformation and disinformation spreading like wildfire through social media that can ultimately have ripple effects on the lives of people.
Because I think, there is a certain standard, a way higher standard that mainstream media, we are held to a higher standard compared to social media. Most times, people might run with a story and the repercussions, we wouldn't really know, but the repercussions are severe for mainstream media. And I think there's a level of credibility, a trust that people give us that, as you rightfully said, we need to get it right.
We need to get it right. I can't stress the importance of getting it right. You're very right in what you say. Mainstream media is held to such a high standard that we are criticized. Your show is criticized, 7 p.m. news is criticized, because people want what they want. And what they want is all that they want. So they don't care if we fall short or if we don't do, what we ought to have done. They have a particular standard that they want us to reach, and we should aspire to that standard every single day. And
we stand on the shoulders of giants too, people who would have been some stalwarts here at home, abroad. So it's almost like it's inevitable. We must maintain that particular level as we approach the profession. I want to give you, as we look to wrap things up, Ryan, a chance to just give that message, to put the theme into perspective, to really share with us your personal thoughts on this World Press Freedom Day.
So on the theme side, I will say it's a very important theme for a very important era in the world's history, covering the climate crisis, covering the environment. You would not believe, people would not understand the barriers that are put in place in order for us not to get stories out, to have stories suppressed. My message would be a two-pronged message. On the first side, I would want to say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and your wider audience, because I know you do have a very big audience, journalism, it's a very challenging field. It might look easy, it might look like it's something that we should be getting right more often than not, and mistakes happen. Journalism is a very, very tough industry, and sometimes I implore you to be a little bit more kinder and patient with our journalists. It's not an easy industry. A lot of these journalists are working very long hours. The pay is crappy. They're trying their best. And you know what's the hardest thing, Jason? A lot of journalists are working long hours, but that's their life. They still have a family life. They still have a personal life. And the second thing would be, to our journalists, it's not easy. Like I mentioned, you have long hours, the pay isn't all that great. You have a family to take care of that you probably don't see as much as you would want to see. You don't get to do things with your personal life. It's a purpose. It's our purpose. Ira Matur yesterday called it a vocation. It is a vocation. It's a vocation. And we've entered this, and this is our opportunity to not only change things, but to leave things a lot better. And to you, Jason, to all of our colleagues, happy World Press Freedom Day. And, reflect on the giants that you speak of, but also appreciate those that we still have with us.
I think you're spot on. You hit it out of the park, because it is indeed a vocation. It is a calling. This is not a work. And there needs to be that passion with purpose. And the payment will come, and it's not always in terms of, yes, of course, dollars and cents, always nice to see a nice top-up account, but that sense of fulfillment, knowing that you've made a difference and you've left the planet, the world, and your nation better than you met it. So, Ryan, Thanks, man. All the best.
Always appreciate being on, Jason.
And we'll win the title this year. You don't worry yourself at all.
Fingers crossed.
We'll get through. Don't worry yourself. Let's take that pause and we come right back. See you soon.